Thanks. My name's Kobi. This will be relatively short, but if you're interested, I'm over in the Wexler building, and you can come visit, and I'll talk more at length about what I'm talking about today. So this is just a short talk about some work that I've been on for several years. I spent some time in the corporate world working for Warner Music Group, and so a lot of the things that I learned as a statistician, I applied while I worked for them, and this is about some of that. If I do this over here, and then let's just do like that. All right, let me just play these for you real quick. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I want you to hear this. Okay. So, Clevie actually, he died a couple years ago, right? I think. Old Jamaican reggae song, Steely and Clevie. The name of the song is Fish Market. It's just instrumental. They were Steely and Clevie, famous producers. This song gained a new life from this fellow, Shabba Ranks. If I would have said Shabba Ranks 30 or 40 years ago, everybody would know who I was talking about. Reggae artist, early 1990s. Same beat. Now it's funny, this is actually, Shabba was known for what they say in patois, slackness, a lot of rhymes that were, let's just say, not for consumption by the kids. But this song was probably one of his cleanest songs, and it's sort of a revolutionary song. He's talking about people who bow down to authority, but not him, not Shabba ever. But this song's old as well. This is 1990 song. Popular song, probably the song that had this beat for the longest and enjoyed the longest life. I'm speeding forward into the future, well, the more recent past. Same beat. Same beat, almost sounds just like he's saying the same words. A Dominican artist heard the Jamaican version of the song from the old Fish Market beat. And now everybody, even the young kids in the audience, should know this one. I just have to let the beat start. So you have to suffer the misogyny for a second. Okay, same beat, Daddy Yankee, big, huge hit. And this song is known as sort of the start of a new genre of music called reggaeton. And so reggaeton's, I'd say been around 15, 20 years. Let me go to the next slide. And it's a cultural phenomena. You can, people make TikToks to it, they make new music to it. It transcends cultures, ethnic groups. And this slide here is a bit about, this is Spanish, but they're explaining the origins. So, just what I just said, it's a Jamaican song, made its way to the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. I'll let this sit for a second. So probably the case of the greatest import, I would say, in music copyright, some say ever, is going on right now in California, where 1,800 people are being sued by Steely and Clevie for having used their beat, never having attributed it, never having paid royalties on it, that original Fish Market beat, right? This beat that started a new genre of music. And the case has made it far enough and not been kicked out. And so it's possible that this genre of music, which originated from this beat way back in the late 70s and 80s, will be recognized as a progenitor. I mean, it clearly is. But that there'll be rights to pay from all these people who have used this sound, which is a standard thing in music. If you take somebody's music and you interpolate it, i.e. take a version of it and play it, or sample it directly, you have to pay rights. My argument is that this beat is just so compelling and speaks to something that's so strong in a certain demographic group that people have gone on and used it anyway and created a genre around it. And one of the ways of illustrating that principle, which leads us into the what I'm studying here and the mathematics of it, these are pictures of demographic groups. So in Jamaica, female, male, age bands, and in Qatar, female, male, age bands, and this is back in fall of 2021. So two places very far apart in the world. On the x-axis, just suffice it to say at this point, these are categorizations of different types of music. And the color, the darker the color, the more of that type of music listened on the y-axis by that particular demographic group. And so you look here and you see a very similar listening pattern between Jamaica and Qatar in 2021. And sometimes when I do this slide, I leave these last two parts off and say, like, what could have been happening in 2021 in Qatar that would make the people listen? Qatar, maybe I'm saying that wrong. I'm from New York, and you can very rarely hear my New York accent, except when I say words like Qatar instead of Qatar. What was happening in 2021? Well, there were a lot of West Indian, young, this age bracket people in Qatar working on the stadium for the World Cup in 2022. And you could track this knowing nothing else but looking at music patterns and seeing what's resonant in both areas. And so there's some sort of synchronicity between these populations. So audiences respond in a very predictable way to musical preferences. You hear a song, I like this song. Chances are that there's elements in this song that you've heard many, many times before that are resonant with your cultural group, with the way you were raised, where you were raised, what was playing when you were younger. For example, reggaeton, the demographic is almost strictly male, 18 to 35, and it's got its strongest pockets in the Bronx, Houston, Los Angeles, and Maryland. These are Caribbean groups here, Bronx and Houston, LA, Mexican, Maryland, Florida. I don't know who's listening to it there, but it's the same group that's with the same sensitivity to that sound. So I got into this back when I was in grad school. I was a disc jockey, that was my part-time job. So on the weekends, I'd carry my records and go to different bars. And that job really is about watching people, paying attention to them, noticing things about them, knowing what you have musically in your crates or catalog so you can get people to dance, right? And over time, if you're good at it, you've paid attention to people for a lot. You've seen them respond to music a lot. You know the different musical elements in your catalog, in your crates, and so you know what sounds are going to go good with what people at what time, what's the groove of the party, and then how to build it to get people out dancing. And so my work, when I ran the data science department for Warner Music, basically the same thing, right? How do I get people to listen to the music we make in a realm, and this is because I'm just a shorter version of the talk, one of the points I want to make, we all have on-demand music now. 87% of the revenue in music comes in via on-demand. It's not like the old days where you had to go buy something, you bought it once, nobody cared about it. Nowadays, we really want people to listen to music that we produce or else you don't get paid, right? The fraction of the time that your music is listened to on the streaming service is the amount of revenue more or less proportional to what you get. So it's the same questions here. How do I represent the sounds of the inventory of music? How do I represent people's demand or affinity for it in different situations? Is there enough information to go back and forth between the two? And what's a good way of encoding this information so I can predict from just the way something sounds how people will respond to it? Let me show you this one more thing here that's super important.
Here's the difference between Western and Indian music. You can think of Western music like a staircase. So when you sing the scales going up and down, it's kind of like you're stepping up and stepping down. So we use the major scales as an example. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, Now the Indian music gets something like a trick staircase, where there's like random trapdoors. Like I mentioned before, we have little acknowledgements or curves in the middle called gamakas. There's different kinds of gamakas, but the one I've talked about most is called the kapita gamaka. The kapita gamaka is basically when you oscillate between two different notes. So for example, right here we have sa, re, ga, or do, re, mi. If you sang it without gamakas, it would just be plain. Da, da, da. But if you sing it with gamakas, you're gonna go sa, re, ga. Now I'm singing green, but actually the notation for that is goody, 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 goody. So I'm going back from here to here and from here to here. So goody, 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 goody. So these kapita gamakas are
So I'd like to play for just a little more.
Trapdoors. Sa, re, ga, ma. This is a short one. Ba, also flat. Da,
We don't need to hear the whole thing, but the point I want to make, just you have in your heads, is so I need a representation of sound, but I need one that's going to be unique or malleable to the particular audience that's listening to it, right? Like, just like everything else, the way that a particular group of people who are relatively homogenous perceive something is going to differ from a different group, right? Like we think we're hearing a song and we're hearing the bass in it, somebody else is hearing the guitar. People with a Western sensibility are going to be used to the ordinary major scale. People from Eastern music are going to be listening to more tuned to this sort of sound. And so when you're thinking about encoding, the encoding has to be with respect to the audience's affinity. All right, so this isn't anything new or anything I discovered. There is a way to represent, a sound. We take the spectrogram, it's basically a picture of a song, split it, take the Fourier transforms, map that spectrogram onto a melodic or other scale, whatever scale is relevant for the audience you're trying to predict. Take logs, take a discrete cosine transform, you end up with perceptual coefficients. So now on the one hand, you have a way of representing sound as information that you can parameterize or change depending upon the audience that's listening to it. On the other hand, now how do we address demand or people's affinity for something? As it turns out, if you look at listening behavior for a large battery of songs, relatively stable. Most songs fit in one of these 6 modes, and there are very few listening patterns which differ. Sometimes you'll have a song that will be very popular for a period of time, it'll go away, it'll come back, and it'll fit right into one of these modes as if people hadn't heard it and are listening to it all over again. Christmas music often behaves like this. So with these regular patterns of listening, is there a way of representing those regular patterns in a way that's informational and corresponds to the perceptual coefficient representation? There is. We can take a spline basis as the covering for the demand space. It turns out B-splines also have a use in visual representations of media, and so it works in sound as well. Smoothing splines are probably the best choice for the sort of thing that we want to get out of demand behavior, is when does it change, when is it accelerating, when is it decelerating, when are the points of changes in convexity. And I didn't talk about this part, but if you come over to Wexler, I'll talk about it with you. The generator for the B-spline is the same generator we use in counting and asking a question about an audience segment, which is, how much listening have I seen? How big is the audience that I haven't seen for the listening I have seen, right? How many successes am I getting if I don't know the total number of trials? So on the one hand side, I have representation of sound. This looks familiar to the earlier talk. I have a UNet. We use one that's very shallow. I encode the sound. I decode it as demand curve output, but demand curve output as recognized via the B-spline coefficients. It's computationally inexpensive, and it's a crosswalk between sound and demand. And the results, it predicts listening behavior very, very well. So these is over time. These are the original data. This is a smoothing curve for the data. And these are our predictions. Now, sometimes we have problems with magnitude, which happens whether or not you can really tighten in on an audience and how many people there are in it that have an affinity for what they're being exposed to. But the important parts here, the inflection and the curvature, i.e. when people are getting tired of stuff or when they're still liking it, which to a music company is super important because you want to know when to spend money, when to pull back, we're able to pick up. So what can you do with stuff like this? You can take what you learn about how audiences respond to different sounds, and you can come up with a predictive tool, which is one of the things we did for the song itself. Take a song, ingest the song, and it'll spit out a map of where the song is likely to be enjoyed, and it's split out at the bottom. If it goes to that next thing right there, it'll come back up. A heat map for the parts of the song that are going to resonate most with the audience as it's playing. What else can you do with this? Well, is there a way to extend this sort of computational tool from creative to how people perceive the creative in visual media? We think that there is. I yanked this from USC, their computational media program, and they're advertising here. This is attribution, right? Like I can have a computer watch something and it can tell you the things that are going on. One of the arguments I make, and I didn't have the slides for it today, but again, come over to Wexler and let's talk about it, is that if you're looking to explain how an audience enjoys something or not, it's better to just focus on the affinity and not to waste time in the categorization and say, hey, this was an action movie, and then people like action movies this month. Say, hey, this was this movie, ingest the movie. How much do people like this type of movie? i.e., have the model really understand, if you will, the content that it's seeing and report back people's affinity for it. And this reminds me of a TV show, that I used to watch. That's, I think it's still on, I'm not sure. Who's seen Mystery Science Theater 3000? This guy's trapped in he's trapped in outer space with these robots who are sentient. They're so sentient that when they watch movies, they can criticize it and make fun of it for the things they like and the things that they don't like. So the goal here is to extend the sort of modeling where we can ingest content and spit back what people's affinity will be for the content, really resolved to changes in affinity over time, situationally dependent. This is useful for people marketing content. This is useful for advertising, pricing content. And there's lots of work in this area, work around the audience, because this works really well when you have an audience that has homogeneous preferences. And I practice what I preach, so I'm really into music. If you like this talk, come listen to my DJ mixes at this website right here. And this here, this last panel, this Tata Vega, her most popular song, dance song, end of disco era song. I don't have it here to play it, but I want to point out written by this guy 10 years before. And when Tata Vega's producers listened to this song, they knew that they could take it, the elements in it, and give her a hit for the sort of audiences that were listening to disco. This song had come out 10 years before, singer-songwriter type of guy. But it's the sort of things you can do when you understand how people respond to the content in the media from its elements. All right, so that's my talk. Thank you.